Hello and welcome to Reroll First Impressions. My name is Angus Morrison. I've had very little sleep. Let's do this thing. I really do wish someone would let the publishers know that it's okay to release something without multiplayer. It really is. It's fine. I do not require the promise of other people teabagging my corpse before I'll consider playing a game, especially when that game is Tomb Raider, developed by Crystal Dynamics and published by Square Enix, released worldwide apart from Japan on the 5th of March 2013. It is explicitly a reboot, a new prequel to the Lara Croft adventures, retelling the story of the formative trials of gaming's best-known heroine. So I'm going to have to be very careful not to fall into the trap I've set for myself by blasting the Devil May Cry fanboys for complaining that DMC wasn't the game they know and love. This is a reboot, and so I shall assess it on its own merits. Where I do make comparison with the previous Tomb Raiders, I hope to offer sufficient justification for doing so, beyond simply, her hair isn't how it used to be. But back to the multiplayer briefly. In itself, it is a thoroughly clunky and generic offering that attempts to force Tomb Raider's systems into unnatural shapes. It doesn't feel like the game was designed to do this, fluid platforming being rather at odds with running and gunning in a relatively static setting. I've chosen to start off with the multiplayer because it's rather reflective of the game's new tone. Prolonged gunfire, waves of enemies, and limited demand for problem solving. Very rarely are you left alone in your environment to explore and discover without the interruptions of a friendly NPC or a small army of foes. And I feel that this is a very peculiar choice for Tomb Raider to have made. This is a story of survival. Lara is shipwrecked on a mysterious island while in search of an ancient Japanese civilization. Far from an isolated struggle against the hostile environment, however, your biggest concern is the bullets, the arrows, molotovs, and dynamite whistling past your ears. The number of enemies you're expected to battle through is ludicrous. Gone are the days of jumping around a solitary tiger, replaced for the most part by static cover shooting. These were the very grounds on which Crystal Dynamics' first Tomb Raider reboot, Tomb Raider Legend, were criticised by the press. Granted, their choice to remove the series' standard lock-on gunfire is commendable. The shooting itself feels far more natural than seeing a fluorescent reticule appear around your target. I wouldn't go so far as to call it fun, though. There are satisfying moments. Stalking a lone enemy through the forest for a stealth kill recaptures that feeling of a desperate scramble for survival, of doing what is necessary to pull through. But the flood of enemies which line themselves up behind cover for your standard shootout does no favours to either the gameplay or the story.
Damn! How many are there?
This is, after all, a tale of personal development. Fresh-faced Lara goes to pieces upon killing her first human. This is a situation unknown and harrowing. 5 minutes later, and in classic video game style, you're basically a Terminator, a remorseless master-at-arms racking up the body count. It may be a struggle for survival, but the odds are very much in your favour with a broad arsenal and copious ammunition. I'll say now that I would pay very good money for a game which tackled this issue head-on, that dealt with the transition from novice to super soldier with something more than an emotive cutscene to plaster over the cracks. This exponential rate of character development is a crutch which developers lean on to cram a grand storyline into a 10-hour window. And frankly, it's becoming wearing. We saw the exact same thing in Far Cry 3 and countless others before it. I would like to see some experimentation in writing and game mechanics that try to push video game story beyond that of the B-movie and towards something truly affecting. The awkward and sometimes cringeworthy dialogue that laces Tomb Raider's script is endemic in the industry.
Oh, don't do this to me, you northern bastard!
But there is some positive stuff. There is. I'm just not there yet. Because the story is further marred by some of the most abominable quick-time events I've encountered in a very long time. We are talking series of button presses that result in an insta-kill upon the first misclick. In the opening hours, it's often unclear precisely what the game wants you to press, and the gruesome deaths that result from panicked experimentation feel frustrating and unfair. Okay, let's lighten the mood a bit. As bitter as I am about its tonal failings, I would be remiss not to praise the direction in which Crystal Dynamics have taken Tomb Raider's environments. These are the largest and most organic settings that Lara has ever set foot in. For the journey of self-discovery, the crofty climbing frames of linear crypts have been opened up into a sprawling, cohesive island. Some people will not like this. Some people will long for the grand puzzle solving, for slotting cogs into ancient machines and rolling boulders onto pressure plates, for solutions that only become clear as you move through the puzzle. In Tomb Raider's new playground, the prescriptive paths are gone, and the environment becomes the puzzle. Traversal is your immediate goal. It is, perhaps, less intellectually challenging than the set pieces of its predecessors, but the natural flow of these immense environments compensates considerably for the lack of logical time sinks. And the tombs aren't gone, they're simply present in the curtailed form of one or two puzzles which adhere to the classic Tomb Raider formula. They lie nested within the larger maps, along with collectibles such as relics, GPS caches, journals, and weapon upgrades to reward the persistent hunter. In short, Tomb Raider is at its strongest when you are left in solitude to explore your surroundings, and fast travel functionality exists for you to revisit previous zones. It is upsetting that Crystal Dynamics don't seem to have realised the importance of this particular point. People will come to Tomb Raider specifically to platform and to explore, to treasure hunt. This isn't a hallmark of the old Tomb Raider series that I'm desperately and irrationally clinging to, but fundaments of the genre. However, the game almost seems to resent the freedom which it offers. The rewards for successfully raiding a tomb are weapon upgrades. The salvage you find in the process of exploring is used to upgrade weapons. The experience points that you accrue through the completion of various tasks are used to boost your combat abilities. It is arguable that all the platforming serves to do is nudge you back to the combat and better equip you for the shooting galleries. It is a truly bizarre dichotomy between the most organic Tomb Raider playground we have ever seen and the straight-up insistence on linear firefighting. Matters are compounded by the fact that each zone contains a map detailing the precise locations of every relic and reward. Whatever happened to exploration for exploration's sake? It completely undermines the thrill of the treasure hunt, transforming the noble pursuit of fictional archaeology into a glorified game of fetch. This, I feel, will be one of the biggest dangers to its replayability. But let's move into some more specific stuff. You may be aware that no pre-release copies were given out to reviewers on PC, while 360 and PS3 reviews have been up for some time. This was the cause of some concern, because it immediately suggests that there's something very wrong with the PC version, that they don't want reviewers to find out. Turns out, though, that this is a very thorough port. Most of the graphics options that you could conceivably hope for are present, with the exception of an FOV slider, so if you're prone to motion sickness or a sense of claustrophobia while gaming, some of the more enclosed spaces which force the camera in may cause some issues. That exception aside, there is even a specific option for the rendering of Lara's hair. The highest setting splits it into individual strands, which, coupled with their individual shadows, actually look pretty weird. It's also accompanied with a colossal frame rate drop in any shot with a close-up of her head, so in my opinion the trade-off certainly isn't worth it. In lieu of recent leaps in facial animation, Tomb Raider's cutscenes feel somewhat dated, but this has never been where Crystal Dynamics have focused their efforts. The game itself is much more visually pleasing, making particularly good use of pitch darkness and guttering firelight to foster unease. Only the distant landscapes betray its console clientele. The audio too, beyond some hammy voice acting, is adept at conveying the hostility of your setting. The elements are harsh, cries in the darkness unsettling. Those hoping for the familiar thwoop of health packs and tinkle of uncovered secrets will be disappointed, but here at least there is little to criticise. Platforming controls very smoothly with keyboard and mouse and the 360 controller alike, though the analog sticks naturally give the controller an edge for fine movement. Most of what you see here was me using the keyboard though, because the controller wouldn't let me invert the X-axis and I got rather angry with it. As you'll hopefully see though, it caused no major issues while moving through the environment. Indeed, this Tomb Raider shows off Lara's most graceful movement yet. She'll naturally reach for the cliff face when skirting a narrow ledge, and the transitions between clambering up a rock face with a pick and leaping for distant ledges flow smoothly. The bow is a particularly nice addition in this regard, providing previously unseen methods to traverse the levels beyond the standard gymnastic routine that we've come to expect from the series. Really, the only issues I've had in this regard involve becoming trapped in an invisible box until I reloaded, and a handful of admittedly significant graphical errors which obscured my screen temporarily. For all my protestations, Tomb Raider is not a bad game per se. It comes across much worse than it probably is because it smacks of wasted potential. The dull and drawn-out shooting galleries, the constant background presence of friendly NPCs, and the detestable inclusion of multiplayer undermine what is an exciting change of pace from Tomb Raider's previously linear problem-solving. The dynamic and expansive environments are a triumph, and had the previous ideal of exploration for its own sake found a home in this newly complex setting, Tomb Raider might have been glorious. I have no doubt that Crystal Dynamics will be releasing more titles in this new series, and I sincerely hope they steer it away from the precipice of the generic shooter towards the phenomenal platformer it can become. This has been the last First Impressions video until Bioshock Infinite on March 26th. I am aware that StarCraft 2 Heart of the Swarm is coming out on March 12th, but as someone who has neither owned nor played StarCraft 2 or its previous expansion, I would be very poorly placed to review it for you. Next week, however, I will be taking a look at both Tomb Raider and DMC Devil May Cry in a reroll on The Reboot. Both of these reviews have thrown up some interesting issues regarding fresh takes on existing IP, and I'd like to address these a little more specifically. Until then, I have been Angus Morrison. Thank you very much for watching. Please do share this video on Facebook and Twitter, subscribe to my humble channel, and I shall see you shortly.